I waited in line for hours at the haunted clinic, but then I realized no one ever left. I never should have opened that door. The chill that ran down my spine felt unnatural, like icy fingers teasing at my skin. I'd heard the whispers, the rumors swirling around this place, but curiosity clawed at me. I imagined the warmth and the safety of my small apartment, but here I was, standing in the eerie twilight of the clinic's gloomy entrance. The air was thick with something sweet and rotten. Was it the smell of decay? Or was it just my imagination? I glanced at the strangers beside me. Their faces wore expressions ranging from nervous anticipation to outright dread. The flickering fluorescent lights above cast unsettling shadows. They twisted and danced, creating dark figures that didn't quite belong. My heart raced. Every shuffling footstep echoed in the deafening silence, punctuated only by the distant creaking of a door swinging open somewhere in the depths of the building. The line moved forward, inch by agonizing inch. Each time someone disappeared into the canary-yellow walls, laughter rang out, sharp and cold. What were they laughing at? What were they going to do inside? My mind churned with thoughts. Goosebumps crawled over my skin, prickling like tiny needles. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but the air tasted stale, acrid. I couldn't help but notice the strange decorations lining the waiting area. Old photographs of faces twisted in agony, a cracked mirror reflecting the grotesque shapes behind me. Had those people walked out with wide smiles? Or were they the ones who never left? I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away, but they latched on tighter, squeezing at my chest. At last, my turn came. They called my name with a voice so hollow and echoing that it sent chills racing down my spine. I stepped forward, heart pounding. I glanced back at the crowd, some still waiting, while others began to murmur nervously. My mind raced with questions. What had they seen? What was about to happen to me? I hesitated. The door loomed before me, a gaping mouth ready to swallow me whole. Shadows writhed within, swirling like the whispers I had come to dread. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. Suddenly, the atmosphere thickened, shimmering with tension. I could barely breathe. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I saw something stir. A figure slipped from the darkness, just out of focus. My heart lurched. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The figure stepped closer, and I was struck by its sheer presence, a darkness that felt like dread made flesh. A scream clawed at my throat, but I couldn't let it out. The air grew colder, sharper. My world narrowed to that horrifying silhouette. Just as the door swung open with a crash, I felt the last remnants of my sanity slip away. Everything froze. I inhaled sharply, and in that moment, I realized, hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stumbled back, the reality of the moment slamming into me like a heavy weight. The door swung wide, revealing a sable abyss that breathed rancid air and despair. My heart thudded, paralyzed by an invisible grip as that same figure emerged from the dark. Its form morphed slightly with every flicker of the dying lights overhead, sometimes a hulking mass, sometimes a slender, elongated shadow. Each pulse of light brought forth a myriad of tortured faces locked within it, their mouths silent in a cacophony of anguish. It stepped closer, draping me in its suffocating darkness. All around me, the clinic seemed to tremble, vibrating with an energy that hummed like a swarm of bees. I took one shaky step backward, a primal impulse fueled by pure dread, only to find the crowd behind me had vanished as if the very walls had swallowed them whole, the echo of my heartbeat reverberated loudly in my ears as I stood frozen in place, the very act of breathing becoming a chore. I could taste the bitterness of terror on my tongue. My mind raced with the faces of those who had entered before me. Had they joined the smear of lost souls swirling within this entity? The laughter that had once drifted ominously lingered in my thoughts, now a taunting melody reminding me of a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Welcome, it rasped, each syllable a dagger digging deeper. Welcome to your reckoning. I could hardly comprehend the words, though they sent tendrils of panic crawling through my veins. I felt an overwhelming urge to flee, but what lay beyond that door was an even greater unknown, a chasm of imaginary fears made manifest that I glanced around for an escape, but every direction appeared hopelessly distorted. The entrance had strangely morphed into a corridor lined with dreadful, peeling wallpaper that breathed of mold and ancient rot, reminiscent of twisted vines strangling life out of existence. I could almost see the terror lurking there, whispering my name softly as if coaxing me into a trap. Before I could muster the courage to leap back through the door from which I'd come, that entity lunged forward. It didn't walk. It glided, the ground barely disturbing under its weight, and for a heart-stopping second, I thought I could see clear through to its depths, the universe swirling within it, both enticing and terrifying. Then, out of the persistent gloom, I spotted a light flickering at the end of the corridor, a mesmerizing warmth amidst the chill that clung to my bones. But that light pulsed with rhythmic desperation, not an invitation, but rather a warning. Suddenly, the creature reached out with an arm extending longer than should have been possible, fingers scraping against the air like long, twisted talons. Something fell from its grasp, a small object that landed with a soft thud, a worn-down ID badge. With trembling hands, I picked it up, my breath catching in my throat at the name emblazoned upon it, Dr. Martin Reed. The same name I had heard whispered among the restless crowd in the waiting area. Back to the light, it hissed, and the sound sent cold ripples down my spine. Only the brave can choose. The darkness pressed in, wrapping around me, the faces within it alive now, their cries rippling through my mind, their pleas becoming my own. Just as the creature lunged toward me, the flickering light grew blindingly bright, throwing every shadow into chaos. My instincts kicked in, and I bolted toward it, driven by a primal scream. I felt the cold breath of the entity at my back, hot with urgency and hunger. The light grew nearer, yet my pulse quickened as a terrible realization crept in. The actions I took now might seal not just my fate, but the fates of those hidden in the dark. Just as I reached for the warmth, that Indian summer light enveloped me, and a deafening chorus erupted behind me, a cacophony of voices mingling in fury and despair as I felt something snag at my ankle. I turned at the edge of the light, my heart racing as the darkness howled in rage, pulling me back, pulling me into its abyss. Choose, it whispered, the voices of the damned rising to a frantic pitch. Choose now, and in that crucial moment, everything paused. Time, light, breath, everything hung suspended. I could not turn back now, but neither could I plunge forward. The choice loomed before me, raw and insatiable, the very essence of fear encapsulated in that fleeting breath of uncertainty. What would my heart decide, knowing that escape might only lead to a darker reality? A shadow lunged forward once more, and I was pulled between what was safe and what terrified me, teetering on the precipice of something far more horrendous than I could ever have imagined. I felt as though I was being torn in two, the warmth of the light battling against the smothering cold of the creature's grip that clutched at my ankle. The darkness howled, a sound so deep it churned within my bones, resonating with the ache of loss and despair that seemed to seep through the very walls of the clinic. My mind screamed for clarity, but I flickered between fear and instinct, the light's glow promising refuge while the shadow tantalized with its relentless pull. Choose. The word reverberated through the air, a sinister mantra echoing across the corridor filled with menstruating despair. I glanced back toward what I secretly knew was a path to oblivion. Faces swirled within the darkness, their anguished expressions recognizable, morphing into those of the people I'd seen in the waiting area, hollow eyes screaming stories of abandonment, of a fate worse than death. Their voices became a cacophony thrumming in my ears, drowning out my thoughts, drowning out my will. With strength surging from somewhere deep within, I began to pull myself forward, yearning to escape. I lunged toward the light, desperate to envelop myself in its unknown warmth, and just as my fingertips grazed its surface, a horrific shriek erupted from behind me. The creature had changed its form again, swelling into a grotesque version of its former self. It towered over the darkness, its contours undulating and shifting like a living nightmare, as it let out a sound that reverberated like thunder. This dark presence, manifesting itself fully, driving my heart into a dizzying frenzy. Why do you resist? It rasped, the venom in its voice almost tangible, wrapping around my throat. My courage wavered, and I stumbled backward. The ground felt unsteady beneath me, shifting like treacherous ground zero. It was trying to wrench me from my resolve, forcing me to glimpse the horrors I ran from, the inevitable truth behind the faces lost in the abyss. The light flickered in response to my hesitation, casting eerie shadows that danced with mockery and delight at my turmoil. Distracted, I hardly noticed the floor beneath me begin to warp, twisting and writhing as if it were alive. I felt the pull of the shadow's loosened grip, and in that moment, I was snapped into a realization so horrifying it anchored me to the ground, a damnation I couldn't escape from or understand fully. That this is what waits for you. The creature laughed, a chilling sound that came from 1,000 mouths weeping in unison. Do you not see? You have already entered the cycle. You are one of them now, the waiting, the despair, the longing. Its fingers elongated and snatched at the fringes of my consciousness, pulling forth hidden memories of moments I'd forgotten, secrets I wished I could bury deeper. Your fate was sealed the moment you set foot in this cursed place, it continued, weaving around my mind like vines, and snaring my thoughts. But you're special. You have a choice. The faces of lost patients seemingly emerged from every crack and crevice. Their mouths moved, forming desperate shapes, casting silent pleas as I felt the desperation flame anew within me. They could see my internal struggle, the desperate dance between hope and doom. Their silent screams filled the air, a reminder that I was not the first, nor would I be the last. That a sudden surge of clarity blasted through me. My feet resumed their movement, racing towards the frenzied glow of the light. I wanted to believe in the chance it offered, a flicker of life amidst the suffocating darkness, but just as I committed to my final sprint, the ground beneath me shattered, cracking like glass, and I plunged into the depths, swallowing what remained of my resolve. As I fell, I heard the voice again, this time softer, almost seductive. You cannot escape the truth of who you are. You are merely the next to join the waiting. The darkness swallowed me in a heartbeat, pulling me into its embrace, but before I slipped entirely, a flash of the clinic's sterile light seared into my mind, the twisted alchemy of hope, light, and monstrous despair. My soul felt lighter, as if it could escape. But when I looked down, I noticed the walls were crumbling, revealing the endless void of malevolence surrounding me, each whisper an echo of those who had been consumed, and as I prepared for the final embrace of that void, the ground opened wide beneath me, my scream echoing in a cacophony of terror. I plummeted toward an unknown abyss, certainty crashing with disbelief. I felt the weight of oblivion crush down on me, but just before I surrendered to the darkness completely, a breath escaped my lips. A single, determined statement caught in a whisper, barely audible amidst the chaos, where I was so close to lose everything. What if this was not the end at all? The air was thick when I hit the ground, the impact jarring me awake in an endless void, yet somehow still surrounded by familiar remnants of the clinic's walls. The sterile white tiles crumbled above me, smeared with dark, ichor-like fluid. A faint glow pulsed from somewhere nearby, casting ghostly shadows on unfinished murals that threatened to stretch into terrifying new shapes. The echoes of laughter twisted into cries for help, mingling with an unbearable stillness that wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud. Panic surged anew, igniting my senses as I pushed upright. I frantically surveyed my surroundings, a twisted version of the waiting room I had just tried to escape. The chairs were still there, bolted to the floor, but now they were covered in a thick layer of shadow, as though they had turned to stone. Empty forms encased in rust-colored shackles leaned against the walls, their eyes hollow and pleading, flickering in and out of existence like poorly crafted illusions. I could hardly breathe as the darkness curled around me, teasing me with the memories I had buried. Welcome back, a voice crooned softly, reverberating through the darkness. It slithered through my ears, luring me into its twisted embrace, making me want to turn and run, yet my feet felt frozen, roots sprawling beneath the ground. You thought you could escape. Oh, dear child, you are now part of the essence that you so desperately tried to elude. Welcome back to the waiting. That I turned, feeling a cold sweat creep down the nape of my neck, to see the eerie figure of a nurse emerging from the shadows. The white uniform that once glowed with sterile brightness now hung tattered and stained, the name tag frayed, but the face was all too familiar. It was the nurse I had seen earlier, but there was an unsettling transformation reflected in her eyes, swirling with dark secrets that shifted like shadows thrown on the wall. They told you lies in the light. None of those filthy things were real, she cooed, stepping closer, yet leaving a space of nauseating emptiness between us that seemed to expand and contract like a heartbeat. You never left. You've merely become another layer in our Historia ghost amongst ghosts. The waiting room, once merely a place of discomfort, now felt infinitely larger, warped by terrible possibilities. A shudder ran through me. The crumpled forms lining the walls whispered with shared agony, their disembodied voices crawling into my ears. I could feel their stories, each one a pulse of hope twisted into despair. I yearned to confront them but recoiled as their shadows writhed, revealing glimpses of their fates as they vanished into the ether one by one, never to return. Your friends will join you soon, the nurse continued, her voice a seductive lull. Doesn't it feel good to belong? She reached for my hand, fingers pale and chilled as they neared my skin, the warmth of life lost in her touch. Together we'll make new memories. Together we will gather the lost so you never have to be alone again. Images rushed through my mind, their frantic faces, the look of fleeting hope that had once shone brightly as they stepped inside, some still fizzing with life, others dulled and as cracked as the walls closing in around me. I stumbled back, heart racing, and as I turned to run, I found myself face to face with the creature from my nightmares. It loomed larger than before, dark tendrils thrashing out, each whisper pulling me closer to the edge of oblivion. Your destiny has already been woven, it hissed, venomous promises slithering through my thoughts. The nurse stood behind me, still smiling, but the light in her eyes was gone, replaced with an eerie darkness that mirrored the void around us. They are coming for you, she said, voice deceptively sweet as my legs began to tremble, as if the very ground beneath me sought to reclaim its property. The waiting begins anew. Each heartbeat will echo through eternity. It is the fate you have come to know. My heart thundered violently against my chest, and I spun back towards the void. Despair loomed closer. The darkness reaching out for me. No. I gasped, my voice barely breaking through the ghostly whispers swirling all around. I won't let this be my fate, but as I cried out, the floor cracked open again, the abyss roaring below, and I felt myself being pulled towards it, helpless against the force dragging me into the void. Just as I teetered on the precipice, ready to plunge into the eternal unknown, a flickering light began to pulse at the edge of my vision, a spark of hope. Or another elaborate deception, and in that moment, torn between despair and possibility, I clenched my fists, my breath hitching in my throat, knowing that whatever flickered in the darkness had the potential to expose a truth more horrific than even the waiting. A low, pulsing hum resonated from the flickering light, rising and falling like a mournful heartbeat. I grasped at the fleeting sensation of hope, feeling it weave through my thoughts like a wisp of smoke, shrouded in uncertainty. Meanwhile, the abyss beneath me crackled with an insatiable hunger, reaching higher, seeping into my veins, mingling with the horror that filled the air. Let go, the nurse whispered, her voice now layered with 1,000 mournful echoes. Embrace the waiting. Give in to what you've always feared, and you will find peace. The juxtaposition of her words struck me like a physical blow, freezing me in place as icy tendrils of despair slithered through my mind. My stomach twisted within me, an impending sense of dread drumming a merciless beat as I stared into the black maw beneath. The flickering light above me became a beacon of false solace, drawing my attention, whispering promises of revelation that I had to understand what waited beyond this veil. Gritting my teeth, I pivoted back towards the light, every instinct screaming at me to flee, yet I moved forward, pulled by a desperate need to uncover just what gripped my friends and countless others in this inescapable nightmare. As I stepped further into the glow, the light enveloped me, warm yet unsettling, lifting me from the brink. I could see the claustrophobic outlines of hearts and faces suspended in the luminescence, wisps of spectral fabric floating around them as if they were enmeshed in a shared dream. My pulse quickened at the faces' familiar eyes widened in muted cries of terror. Their bodies remained encased in the darkness, shadows merging into that dreadful waiting room. "Help us." One voice trembled. "Please. Break the cycle." They reached out to me, their hands appearing like gossamer threads caught in the light, weaving a fabric of desperation. I wanted to grasp onto them, to pull them from their torment, but as my fingertips drew closer to the luminous barrier, an unseen force yanked me back. This horror was a trap disguised as salvation. No. I gasped, fighting against the force pulling me back. "I won't leave you here, not yet," the nurse hissed, her laughter merging with the ragged cries of those imprisoned within their own nightmares. The ghostly figures began to fade, their voices intertwining, weaving a tapestry of sorrow, a cacophony of lost souls grasping futilely at drips of possibility that slipped through their fingers. Unyielding dread pooled in my heart as dread gripped my throat, their agony became my own, the realization shaking through me like a chilling draft. No resolution awaited beyond that, like merely a deeper plunge into this hellish reality. "Join us, and become one with our story," they echoed, their faces stretching into sorrowful caricatures of yearning and despair. The influence of their plea began to spark a twisted sense of belonging within me. Each moment danced like a flickering flame against a bitter wind gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Suddenly the light sputtered and dimmed, bathing the room in an oppressive darkness tinged with desperation. "Soon the cycle will begin again," the nurse crooned, her smile both enticing and ghastly. "Are you ready to welcome your pain to this family?" A cacophony of voices erupted around me, filling the oppressive silence with maddened whispers that raced through my mind, dark and insatiable. Shadows coalesced into claws that tore at my resolve, intoxicating me with hopelessness. I felt the weight of their stories crushing me, unraveling the threads of my own identity as I sank into the enveloping terror. My skin prickled with unseen eyes scrutinizing my every move. Panic surged anew while I fought to maintain my grip on reality as fragments of memory flickered violently, the warmth of my friend's laughter, the fleeting joy amid the predicaments of mortal life. Just as the shadows threatened to envelop me wholly, I caught one last glimpse of the glowing light fading above. My chance was vanishing. I hurled myself toward the last breath of hope, screaming against the howling silence that sought to drown me. Yet, as I reached for the glow, utter blackness engulfed me, drowning out every sound as a new presence emerged, whispering deeds of forgotten horrors and chilling regrets. And then it spoke, not with the voice of the nurse nor the voices of my friends, but something deeper, ancient and endless, resonating with the pulse of despair. "There is no escape. Only waiting, for the next offering." As the darkness closed in around me, I felt them cold hands pulling me down, depths of which I couldn't resist. My heart sank as the weight of their despair washed over me in waves, drowning my scream before it ever left my lips. All the while, I glimpsed a silhouette flickering in the shadows, wearing a familiar mask of twisted familiarity, a promise lingering in its wake. Too, would become part of the waiting. The light blinked out completely, as I was swallowed by the duration of terror, and all at once, I realized I wasn't alone in that horrifying space anymore. Something or someone was watching eagerly from the dark. The stillness enveloped me like a shroud, the absence of sound turning every breath into a fragile ember threatening to extinguish in the cold grip of the surrounding darkness. For a heartbeat, I stood frozen amid the void, trying to visualize what had become of the light, the spectral figures, and the all-consuming shadows that now wrapped around me like a noose. Anxiety knotted in my stomach, rising to my throat as I desperately fought to hold on to my senses. Then came the sensation, a slow, deliberate skimming brush along my skin. I flinched as a chill seeped through me, tendrils of ice coiling around my core. A heavy presence loomed close, its arcane energy crackling like electricity, smothering the air. I involuntarily stumbled backward, my feet grazing against a surface that was both there and not a barrier formed of anguished memories, or perhaps the lingering essence of the lost souls. "Not yet," the voice echoed again, deep and revelatory, reverberating against the inner walls of my mind. Its regard was direct, almost intimate, as if the entity reveled in my terror. Shadows shifted and swirled just out of sight, whispering secrets never meant to be spoken, invocations of forgotten despair that permeated the air, making my body vibrate with every mention. "Why are you doing this?" I gasped, the challenge tinging my voice with a tremor that betrayed the hollow bravery I sought to maintain. But no answer came, only a tightening of the darkness, binding and constricting, like a serpent enrapturing its prey. The chilling silence stretched infinitely, feeding off my anxiety as if savoring every flutter of doubt within my trembling heart. That it was then that a sting erupted from my wrist. I jerked in pain, a hot line of fire slicing through the pallor of my skin. Glancing down, I saw a thin line of sanguine crimson cascading warm against the stark contrast of the dark around me. It seemed the darkness too shared in my suffering, drinking in my grief, as if it were the key ingredient to feed its insatiable appetite. I felt my pulse quicken, each throb resonating within the depth of that frigid void, becoming more desperate, more frantic. From the endless shadows emerged figures, their forms twisting, elongated, faces barely recognizable. They screamed silently, their mouths opening in guttural rapture, drawing nearer in a slow, chilling dance of inevitability. I stumbled back further, fear fueling my escape toward the cavernous depth that extended infinitely behind me. I couldn't become one of them, I couldn't give in to that darkness, but just as I steeled myself for desperation's call, the familiar, dread-laden voice returned. You cannot escape what you are, it mocked, the shifting shapes becoming exhilaratingly close. Embrace the fear, for it has chosen you. In that dreadful instant, I recalled the promises exchanged among lost friends and the hellish pact whispered among helpless souls, that those waiting never left in search of resolution, but remained each tethered to the other, a collective haunting carried forward forever. The faces of my friends emerged in the depths around me, distorted, their eyes pleading as they reached out in terror, but unable to breach that invisible barrier separating hope from the harrowing truth. Suddenly, an excruciating blast of light shot through the darkness. My eyes squinted against the sudden brightness, blinding me momentarily. Confusion clouded my sense of direction, the boundary between dread and revelation blurring. As my vision sharpened, I gasped. The nurse stood before me again, now woven entirely from shadow and light, a twisted amalgamation of despair glistening malevolently against the backdrop of my horrified gaze. Accept the fate that awaits you, dear heart, she crooned, swaying gently in the ether. Partake in the sacrifice, and you shall become the storyteller. Simultaneously, I felt a horrible undulating pressure building around me, pulsating rhythmically, pushing me deeper into the clamoring chaos of whispers and twisted laughter. My heart thundered in sync, echoing the horrors encoded into the very marrow of this place. Suddenly, I felt a hand close around my ankle, a sickening grip that yanked me downward. The ground felt uneven, splintered by the howls of abandonment, the echoes of countless souls stretching out into infinite darkness. I gasped, the realization piercing through my heart as I was dragged closer to the waiting abyss. Amidst my struggles and the shouts of my friends forming a discordant cacophony, a bone-chilling laughter enveloped the corridor, resonating deeply within the void, a reminder of what I could become, another story to be told by the shadows that would soon dance in my place. The last thing I saw was the face of the nurse, grinning ever wider, as her form dissolved into an inky mist that enveloped me. Welcome home, came her sultry voice one last time before everything fell silent but for the pulse of dread that throbbed in tandem with my fading heartbeat. And then, unmistakably, I saw them, friends, their faces now transforming under the weight of despair, merging with the shadows. They were waiting, no longer grasping for freedom but welcoming the darkness like a lover. That I was next. The moment the shadows absorbed me, a cold wave rushed over my body, tangling my limbs and suffocating my cries. I felt myself pulled into a deeper abyss, every shred of my being reverberating with dread. This sensation was not unfamiliar, it was as though I were reliving a nightmare, one in which I had always been bound, my choices reduced to a maelstrom of despair. When the suffocating grip finally loosened, I found myself thrust into a dismal room, dimly lit by a pulsating overhead light that flickered ominously, casting long shadows that twisted against the walls. The air was thick, carrying the distinct scent of decay and something sweeter, almost like the tang of rusting metal mingled with desperation. It hung heavy in my lungs, forcing me to cough as I processed my surroundings. Row after row of exam tables stretched out before me, each one occupied by a translucent figure, a patient, I thought, though the word felt inadequate in this dreadful catacomb. They lay motionless, their hollow features etched with the anguish of unfinished stories, forever suspended between life and death. Their gray skin glistened under the harsh light, capturing the reflections of agonized whispers that spilled from invisible mouths. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, the same nurse from before, though a new layer of terror had been added to her unsettling presence. Her once comforting demeanor was now unintentionally malevolent, her smile stretching wider and revealing pearly teeth that seemed suspiciously sharp. She arched her brow, a predator savoring its fare, and as she stepped closer, the weight of her gaze crushed onto my chest. "Welcome to the end of your journey," she urged sweetly, her voice dripping with mockery. "You thought you could escape? Each of my beautiful patients is a chapter in the grand narrative of despair. And you, dear heart, are next to be penned. Let me go." I yelled, a raw panic threatened to tear me apart. The urgency of survival ignited a fire within, and yet, the dimly lit room responded with an echo of tortured laughter, a chorus emanating from all directions, taunting my plea. "The more you resist, the more enriching your tale becomes," she replied, gliding effortlessly around me, her fingers grazing the edge of one patient's sheet, sending a shudder through its form. The figure stirred slightly, its hollow eyes flickering open for an instant, revealing a glimmer of desperate intelligence before they clouded over once more. With desperate urgency, I turned to flee, but the room twisted seamlessly around me, warping and contorting until there was no escape. The tables loomed as an inescapable prison, and as I ran, I glimpsed the faces of my friends rising from the void, their ghastly expressions fighting to mask the horror beneath. One by one, they faded under the suffocating embrace of the shadows, arms outstretched but powerless to reach me. "Help me!" I screamed to them, the stillness of their forms strangling the hope I clung to. They did not answer, did not even blink. A wretched collection imparted to the darkness, consumed by its infernal grasp. That I felt the nurse's hand on my shoulder then, heavy and sure as the weight of inevitability. "Touch them, and become one with the narratives," she whispered conspiratorially, her breath icy against my ear. "Lose yourself in the tales waiting to be told. No. I cried, tearing away only to feel the creeping tendrils of despair calling to me, whispering promises of belonging within the shadows. Thumping against my chest, that familiar rhythm intensified, each heartbeat a death knell drawing me closer. Just then, a shudder ripped through the air, causing shards of glass to rain down from the broken light fixture above. I ducked instinctively, but the shards fell like molten daggers, splintering through the air toward an unseen target. As I turned to dodge the assault, a splash of crimson arced beautifully, painting the walls with the final stroke of a tragic story. Beneath the flickering light, shapes began to manifest amidst the chaotic grotesque sight, repetitions of tortured lives intertwining into an elaborate tapestry of suffering. Beneath their surface, I felt the thrumming pulse of an all-consuming hunger, the very essence of the clinic itself, feeding upon the despair of the lost. Suddenly, as if awakening from a stupor, one of the patients shot up from the table, their eyes wide with an unfathomable terror. "Don't trust her!" they screamed, launching themselves toward me, but in that moment of chaos, the nurse seized them and pulled them back with an effortless flick of her wrist. "Not yet, darling," she glowered, pulling forth a dark, glimmering blade from the depths of her pocket. "We need you alive for just a bit longer." Heart pounding, my instinct screamed for me to find a way out. The nursery of lost souls was alive, and it craved more than just stories, it yearned for my essence now, too. The pulsating shadows beckoned me as the wounded patient struggled against the nurse, undulating in desperate fight while the others continued to slide into their distorted forms, and as light flickered once more, cascading over their contorted faces, revealing the depth of their suffering and the reality that enveloped us all, I had one desperate revelation: the next sacrifice could just as easily be the last. But who or what would write the epilogue? The room lurched, and without warning, the overhead light exploded, cascading shards of glass and chaos, casting haunting shadows upon madly twisting forms as I was shoved forward under the onslaught. Just as I felt myself tumbling into the abyss, I heard a word, a name, its resonance unearthing a buried shard of memory. "Run," and then everything collapsed into darkness. I awoke on a cold, hard surface that sent jolts of pain through my body. I could barely take a breath as my lungs clamored for air, thick and stifling, still resonating with the remnants of the dark shadows I had been ensnared by. My eyes snapped open to a pre-dawn gloom, heart racing, but the sensation of being trapped was still entwined around me like invisible chains. This new chamber was vast yet oppressive, lined with walls that seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding rhythmically, as if the very walls were thoughtful entities weighing heavy with despair. The flickering remnants of some bygone light source provided glimpses of scribbled notes plastered chaotically across the walls, written in desperate scrawl, "Don't look back, they watch, lost in the stories." Each phrase slapped against my consciousness with a desperate urgency. Rising to my feet, I stumbled and clutched the cold metal table beside me for support. I peered down and froze. Littering the surface were faded photographs, faces torn from memories, staring blankly at the lens. The joy that had once colored their features had long since leached away, leaving only haunting eyes, wide with realization or perhaps regret. Strangely, many of these faces bore resemblance to people I had known, childhood friends, ex-lovers, even a distant uncle whose smile forever haunted my dreams. An ice-cold shock ran through me as I realized I was no longer alone. An unsettling stillness hung in the air, thickening like fog as shapes flickered at the corner of my vision. They floated, just out of reach, clad in gauzy shrouds that swayed like leaves caught in a dying breeze. Wisps of their forms seemed to blend into the shadows, while their hollow gazes watched me, expectant and mournful. "Join us," a voice whispered, melodic, yet dripping with sorrow, echoing through the murky air. "You are part of our story now." Fear clutched at my throat, and yet a deep-seated empathy stirred within me as I felt their longing. These were not mere specters but echoes of lives lost, trapped between realms. I understood, with creeping dread, that my fate intertwined with theirs. The very essence of my being was now tied to the narratives these lost souls had spun. "Help us," another voice murmured softly, yet the sound twisted in the back of my mind, resonating against my fears. "You know their names. You can set us free." I recoiled, shaking my head violently. "I don't know anything. I just want to leave." Their forms swirled, growing agitated, shadows creeping closer, encircling me in a tangible embrace. The air thickened with a stench of sorrow, and the flickering shadows started to converge toward me, thoughts a cacophony of half-formed words that danced dangerously along the edge of clarity. Suddenly, a chuckle disrupted the gloom, rich and cruel, echoing through the space. "Anguish is such a beautiful thing." The nurse's voice slithered between the souls, invigorating them as if truly breathing life into a horrific tale. She appeared elegantly from the darkness, her eyes glinting with maddening delight. "See? They crave a twist to their stories. But you're the author now," she taunted, stretching her limbs out to encompass the room, her movements sinuous, as if she were swimming through the air. "Shall we let them free? Leave them alone?" I shouted, shielding my eyes from the grotesque display of desperate souls as they twisted violently in a mournful dance, their hands reaching toward me, pleading. The nurse raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "But they carry the stories within them, their narratives breathe as they wither. Yours has only just begun." I felt an overwhelming sadness crash over me, threatening to drag me under like a tidal wave, each soul attempting to communicate their burdens, their histories clawing at my heart. Flames of anguish flickered along the edges of my mind, the stories they had buried became stitched into my essence. My heart thundered in my chest, pounding out a rhythmic chant, "Escape, escape, escape." Suddenly, an eruption of laughter erupted behind me, and the darkness grew colder. The walls shuddered as shadows coiled like serpents around my legs, threatening to pull me down into their world. With a sudden burst of resolve, I wheeled around, my desperation igniting a fuming fury deep within. "You're wrong!" I screamed, pushing myself away from the silent chorus. "I refuse to become a story." In that moment, something shifted. An unseen rift opened within the wall, pulsating like a wound. The swirling mass converged on it, as if some magnetic force was drawing the lost souls into its depths, the nurse's face contorting in frustration. "Foolish child," she shrieked, claws grazing my cheek. "You can't flee your narrative. You will be consumed like all the rest." But I saw my chance. If I moved swiftly, perhaps the rift offered a way out. I could feel their cold fingers grazed across my skin, desperately trying to pull me back, while I launched myself forward, plunging into the unknown. Just as I crossed the threshold of the rift, a scream broke free. A wailing chorus of lost souls surged, echoing in harmonic dissonance through the darkness, merging with one singular voice that rose above the rest, and then the world imploded once more, dragging me down into an abyss of screams. Desperate hands reaching toward me, with one last echo of understanding resonating through time and space. Help us, don't forget, before blackness engulfed me completely. I fell into the void, gravity ceasing to exist as memories flared around me like dying stars. Moments from my life rushed forth, blurring the lines between my reality and a nightmarish tapestry woven from the threads of regret and fear. Faces, once familiar, now contorted into eerie visages of despair. Each flash wound a noose tighter around my sanity. Help us, came the wails, echoing off the endless walls of darkness. They coiled around me, suffocating my thoughts. As I tumbled deeper into the chaos, a clarity struck me. I was not lost, at least not yet. I had a choice, an unspoken power that flickered just beyond my fingertips. Suddenly, I was spat out onto an uneven surface, hitting the ground with a bone-jarring thud. I gasped for breath, my vision clearing to reveal yet another chamber, but this one was different. The walls pulsated with liquid shadows, throbbing like a festering wound. Dim, flickering lights broke through, casting ghastly shapes across the room's expanse, and I rose unsteadily to my feet, heart racing wildly. That a scratched and peeling sign swung above my head, swinging gently despite the absence of wind. Room of Stories. My pulse quickened at the realization that every tale the spirits carried might still linger in this space, but now they felt twisted, neglectful of the true, the distorted reflection of the past. That I stepped forward, each footfall resonating through the hollow chamber, creating echoes of ghostly whispers. They wrapped around me as I approached a table piled high with the remnants of broken narratives, scattered pages, ink-dripped scripts of unfinished thoughts, and mangled photographs of captured souls. I reached out to touch a crumpled page, trembling slightly as the words seemed to shimmer beneath my fingertips. Welcome, a soft male voice chimed, sending a chill down my spine as it resonated from somewhere deep within the dark. You have arrived at the essence of stories left untold, trapped here in limbo. They take a toll, they demand to be freed but offer nothing in return. Turning slowly, I found the source of the voice. A gaunt figure hung suspended in the air, skin pallid and stretched tight against his bones like weathered parchment. Wisps of spectral mist trailed behind him, swirling like smoke. He raised his eyebrows, eyes clouded and lost. You think the souls will grant you respite? They only wish to chain you to their forlorn tales. Don't you realize? Once penned, their words will be yours forever. Their suffering, I protested, a surge of defiance igniting my weary spirit. I have to do something. They will consume you. You're merely a vessel for their grief, for their twisted laughter. His voice crackled, breaking as despair etched over his face. Even now, as they beckon you closer, that I felt it then, the weight of countless eyes watching me, shadows creeping along the edges, urging me to take the plunge into despair. The air grew colder, filled with a cacophony of discordant whispers, and the floor trembled beneath me as if it, too, were alive with longing, drawing every soul closer. Do you even know their names? He whispered, the tension hanging thick as the air pressed against my chest. Each name, a story waiting to be absorbed, a chant to summon the suffering. Once you embrace them, you can never escape. Panic surged, a visceral urge to flee this tangled web of sorrow and regret. I could feel the longing entwined within me, clinging and gnashing at my spirit. Shadows lunged forward, arms extended from the shadows, their fingers grasping with inhuman strength, tugging at my limbs, threatening to anchor me in this hellish realm. That I closed my eyes, suppressing the rising tide of despair, focusing on nothing but the sound of my heartbeat. I won't be your puppet. I screamed, forcing through the suffocating embrace of their grip, pushing to reclaim my identity, but then a shrill wail pierced the air, cutting through my resolve like glass and piercing the veil of uncertainty. I turned, drawn unwillingly toward the source. An ethereal figure hovered at the other end of the chamber, face contorted in anguish. A pale hand clasping a twisting ribbon of darkness that slithered along the ground. You're the one who can hear them. She shrieked, voice raw with desperation. The key. Please, you must save us. I felt the weight of her plea as the shadows encircled me like a noose, a haunting symphony beckoning me from all angles. Save you? I questioned, my voice trembling. But how? I know nothing. I cannot help those I do not understand. With a frantic motion, she thrust the ribbon forward, and it split the room, a dark tendril of memories snaking its way through the chaos. You must enter. Their stories bleed within you. Before I could protest, I was pulled toward her, warmth radiating from her form amidst the icy grasp of despair. Just as I was about to reach her, the shadows thickened into a talon-like hand, gripping my ankle with bone-crushing force. Foolish child. The gaunt figure howled, fury mingled with despair. You will be lost forever. As I fought against the darkness consuming not just my body but my very essence, the last vestiges of the spectral figure's voice echoed around me. Don't forget the names. Then, all at once, they tightened their hold, pulling me down, grasping my memories, slashing through my sense of identity. The distorted wail of the other figure echoed in my ears, and with the ferocity of 1,000 storms, everything plunged into darkness once more, and then I felt the name surging within me, clashing with my thoughts, ready to spill forth just as the shadows ensured my irrevocable embrace. Please help me. Before the name could escape, the dark tide swept through, surrounding me in an unrelenting grip as I plunged deeper into the black. I woke up on the cold, hard floor of a dark room, my heart racing. The thick air tasted of despair, rancid and sour, and whispers echoed softly around me, wrapping me like a shroud. I lay there for a moment, trying to make sense of my surroundings. Shadows flickered along the edges of the room, coalescing into shapes that flickered in and out of existence, just like the figures I had seen before. They were here, trapped in this cruel limbo, and they were watching. Help us, save us, the whispers rolled over me like the tide, desperate and hollow. As I pushed myself to my feet, I noticed the floor was littered with objects that seemed familiar: cards, toys, broken glass. Each piece resonated with echoes of laughter long gone. I took a hesitant step forward, and the floor creaked beneath my weight, an ominous reminder of the decay that permeated this place. With every inch I traversed, my chest tightened further, the shadows drawing closer, swirling like a living storm around me. Just as I mustered enough courage to move deeper into the darkness, a flash of blinding light surrounded me. I staggered back, shielding my eyes as a figure emerged from within the glow. It was the nurse, her smile impossibly wide, eyes glinting with malevolence. Welcome home, she cooed, her voice dripping with honeyed malice. You've returned to our little sanctuary. You already know the stories, but dear, you haven't even begun to write your own. I stumbled backward, heart lurching violently. I won't let you do this to me. I shouted, even as I felt the very essence of my words dissolve into the darkness, swallowed whole by the shadows. You can't keep me here. The nurse laughed, a chilling sound that reverberated around me like a funeral bell. Oh, but you are part of the waiting now. Did you think escaping was as simple as walking out the front door? You walked into this curse willingly, and each step you take solidifies your bond. Her words struck me like a physical blow, igniting a flicker of panic deep within. No, I whispered, anger boiling beneath my skin. I refuse to be tethered to this nightmare. I've seen the faces of your victims, your stories. But my story, it's still unwritten. That last word fueled my resolve, igniting a burgeoning fire within me. I spun on my heel and sprinted back the way I had come, adrenaline surging through my veins. The shadows leaped toward me as I darted through the cavernous space, breathing hard, desperation clinging to my every movement. Suddenly, I saw them, the faces. My friends, trapped within their own ethereal prisons, hazy figures reaching out to me with agonized expressions. Save us. Break the cycle. They shouted, their words echoing in harmony, meshing together into a chorus of despair. But I couldn't. My body froze, and in that moment, their faces twisted with sorrow, bodies shimmering and fading before my eyes, lost again to the shadows. The nurse's laughter cascaded through the air, drowning out their cries. You think you can save them? You can't save what you don't understand, dear heart. You'll only become another tale, another ghost in this endless wait. Anguish ripped through me as I realized the futility of my escape. As I reeled in despair, something within me broke, an understanding what I needed wasn't a way out but to confront the darkness that housed our stories, the shared pain that tied us together. Their faces began to shift, morphing into something else, something more. Each bore the scars that slowly etched into meth realization that they were never truly lost, and neither was I. We were simply waiting. Names, I whispered, the weight of their pleas crashing against me, entwining with the shadows. I felt their energies wrap around me, thick and palpable. I needed to conjure the stories, to weave them into a tapestry that could pull me through. Names, I growled, summoning every ounce of resolve, knowing that to understand their tales would mean to embrace the darkness entirely. I will remember them. The room surged in response, the shadows thrumming with a chaotic energy. As the threads began to weave and intertwine, a new light flickered into existence, a glimmer of hope, fragile yet steadfast. No. The nurse screeched, her face twisting with fury. You will regret this choice, but I wouldn't allow her to strangle my resolve. As the light pulsed brighter, I felt their stories surging within me. Memories collided, crisscrossing like wildfire through my mind, shifting forms as I grasped them tightly. Each name took shape, silhouettes emerging beside me, illumination flooding the darkest recesses where despair thrived. Rachel, I proclaimed, essence enveloping me with warmth. Lucas. Claire, and in that moment, every name echoed like a heartbeat tying us together, a unity woven in our shared pain. Hope unflinchingly ignited as whispers morphed into roaring defiance, the shadows recoiled, anguish mingled with fury. I felt their memories vibrating through me, the very essence of who I was binding with those lost souls. I no longer felt as if I were drowning, rather, I surged forth into the light they had never seen within this clinic of horrors, a burning will to live. Remember me, I urged, my voice rising above the clamor, rippling through the darkness that threatened to consume us. This is our story. Together, we will break the cycle. With one final chant, the energy erupted, a blinding wave of illumination sweeping through the chamber. The nurse screamed in rage, her form dissolving into the abyss, the shackles of despair shattering around me. Each flickering shadow transformed, drifting away into endless light, and I felt myself propelled toward the warmth, a cell made of unity manifesting. Fingers grasped at me from every angle, and for a moment, dread clawed at my heart once more. Yet, I shot through that boundary, propelled by their energy, bursting through the veil of shadows and faces colliding that I tumbled through darkness, colors mixing, until finally, I awakened, gasping for breath, on the hard floor of the waiting room of the clinic. The light flickered above, assuring me of life. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and I peered around a space now empty. The whispers had ceased, silence echoing in their wake, but the overwhelming realization weighed heavily. Something still lurked beneath the surface, a grim reminder that the specters of despair could still return, still traverse the chasms of fear and hope, and somewhere, a dread tale still awaited its writer, and a haunting thought inched its way into my consciousness. I could never truly escape the tales unwritten, for I was now a part of those shadows, a keeper of their stories, and as I turned toward the exit, unable to shake the feeling that something was watching from beyond, I heard a familiar whisper of truth pressing against my mind like a sinister promise. They are coming back for you.